Welcome back to the Urban Pharmacy Podcast. I'm super excited to have you here today, and I'm really excited to introduce you to my guest, Chris Wark. Chris is a young adult cancer survivor, best-selling author, and patient advocate. Chris was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer in 2003 at just age 26. After surgery, Chris made the decision to go against his doctor's advice, opted out of chemotherapy, and chose to use nutrition and natural therapies to heal. More than 6 years later, in 2010, Chris began sharing his story of faith, courage, and determination, and his message of hope that chronic diseases like cancer can be prevented and reversed with a radical transformation of diet and lifestyle. In the last decade, Chris has become one of the most well-known cancer survivors on the planet and reaches millions of people per year as a blogger, podcaster, speaker, and global health coach through his books, social media, and his website, chrisbeatcancer.com. Chris is the author of the national bestseller, Chris Beat Cancer, a comprehensive plan for healing naturally, published by Hay House in 2018. His second book, Chris Beat Cancer Daily, 365 Days of Inspiration, Encouragement, and Action Steps to Survive and Thrive, was published by Hay House in 2020. And his third book, Beat Cancer Kitchen, Deliciously Simple Plant-Based Anti-Cancer Recipes, was published by Hay House in November 16th, 2021. Chris also created the Square One Cancer Coaching Program, which has been shared with over 1 million people globally since 2017. I'm really excited for you to hear this conversation with Chris today. I've been connecting with him via social media, which you'll hear at the beginning of the podcast, to get him on the show for some time now. And I'm really excited that you get to hear his story, and I hope that it inspires you. And I also hope that you share this podcast with somebody who might be struggling through their own journey of cancer or know others who have it. So I really, really appreciate you sharing this podcast. It means the world to me. I put a lot of energy and effort into it, and I just want to help people live a more natural and holistic lifestyle and a plant-based lifestyle so that they can thrive and not just survive. So with that said, before we get into the episode, I want to remind you that the doors are open for my community membership society, which is called Holistic Wellness Society. And we have weekly live coaching, and there's tons and tons of whole food plant-based recipes, plus so many tips and tactics and previous trainings and recordings of holistic living to help you along your way. And I would love nothing more than to hold your hand and walk through this journey to better living with you. So be sure to click down in the show notes if you're interested in learning more about Holistic Wellness Society so that you can have the community, the resources, the tools, and the support that you need to live your best life. All right, here's Chris. Chris Wark, welcome to the Urban Pharmacy Podcast.
Thank you, Stacy. Good to be with you.
Thrilled to be in your presence today. I've been bothering you on Instagram, just kind of casually for about a year now. I'm super happy that you said yes to letting me ask you some questions, because you are a healer and you have helped so many people along their wellness journey in general, but really specifically with their cancer journey. And that is what we're here to talk about today. So anything first that you want to say? I mean, how are you today before we get into the questions? Because I'm going to ask you the same questions that you've probably been asked a million times.
I'm good. Thanks for asking. Yeah, it's true. The funny thing is like when I started, I was diagnosed with cancer in 2003. And after I got well, I didn't want to talk about cancer anymore. Like I was done with cancer and just wanted to move on with my life. And about 6.5 years passed, after my diagnosis, but I just got this nagging feeling that I needed to share my story and that maybe it could help encourage other people and give them hope. So I started this website called chrisbeatcancer.com, thinking, well, if I just put my story on the internet, like I won't have to keep telling it.
Not so
Yeah.
much.
Little did I know. Yeah. Huge mistake.
People
Not really,
really
but
want to
it's,
talk to you.
yeah, it's
You
changed my life for the better in every way. And I love to tell my story. And so, yeah, don't feel bad about asking me any
All right.
question that you think I've already been asked 1,000 times.
Because I'm going to, because your story is so good. And I've heard it so many times. I've heard it just so many times from especially the people in the plant-based community that have interviewed you, because I listened to all of those podcasts and stuff. And Chef AJ, and I've seen you on there multiple times. And
Love AJ. She's awesome.
yeah, she's so incredible. And she's helped amplify what I'm doing as well. And she's just an amazing, kind-hearted soul. So I want to know from you, let's ask you the question that really is where this all came from. And I want to know the story of what happened in 2023. And if you can give us details, that would be awesome, because there are a lot of things that you went through to get to where you are now. So
yeah, I went through a lot. And I think you meant to say 2003.
that's what I meant. I'm not sure
yeah.
what I even said.
You said 2023, but it's cool.
Oh, yeah.
No problem.
That 20 years ago.
Yeah. Almost 20 years ago. So December 2003, actually, yeah, 20 years ago, I started having abdominal pain, right? In 2003. I'd been married for 2 years. I was 26 years old, 25 really when the pain started. And I was an entrepreneur. I was buying, basically had been in as a real estate entrepreneur for 2 years also. And was buying houses and fixing them up and reselling them and renting them out and just doing all that kind of stuff, fun stuff in real estate. And I was a musician and was playing shows and just really excited about my life. Like things were good. I just think things were going good. And I was, again, mid-20s guy with ambition. But anyway, I started having these abdominal pains and they would come and go. And it wasn't daily, it was just here and there. And then it progressed to daily, and then it progressed to like a few times a day. And by the end of the year, like, getting close toward the end of the year, the pain really got to be significant. And so I went to the doctor. I was referred around to a few different doctors. They didn't know what was wrong, and eventually ended up getting a colonoscopy. And that's where they found a tumor in my colon. That is the large intestine for anyone that doesn't know. And it was a golf ball sized tumor. And I woke up from the procedure and they told me that. And they said, we biopsied it. We're going to send it to the lab. Hopefully it isn't cancer. And a couple of days later, I got a call. It was cancer. So that was a pretty big shock. Cancer is a shock at any age, but when you're, a young adult, it's like the last thing you would ever expect. And I didn't have any family history. I mean, I didn't know anything about cancer. And so I was I like to describe myself as the typical cancer patient in the beginning, because I had no clue what cancer was, no experience around cancer patients. Like I just didn't know anything. And I was told, we've got to get you into surgery right away before this spreads and kills you. And this is what most cancer patients are told. Right? They get a diagnosis and they're rushed into treatment. I mean, it's like it's like you are thrown onto a high-speed train.
Yeah.
And it's, and people that haven't been through the disease don't know this, or if you haven't had a loved one get diagnosed, but literally within days of a diagnosis, sometimes it's the next day, they'll have you in surgery, or they'll have you starting chemo, or they'll have you starting radiation treatments. Like you don't even have time to think. The treatments start immediately. And so you don't have time to read or research or think or even pray about it. Like it's just, so there's an urgency that in many cases is not necessary. Actually, in most cases, most cancers are not life-threatening when they are diagnosed.
Yeah, I've heard
it's
you
a
say
lump
that.
or a bump.
Yeah, I've heard you say that it's a pretty high percentage that kind of gets pulled into this really rapidly, and it's not necessarily necessary.
Yeah, and the urgent emergency treatment is not necessary in most cases. And so sometimes, yeah, someone's like really sick and they have to be hospitalized, and they realize in the hospital, oh, they've got cancer all over their body, right?
Yeah.
Or there's a tumor that's threatening to close their windpipe, or it's threatening to block the colon, things like that, or liver bile ducts, things like that. Like there's certainly emergencies with cancer, but in many cases it's like lump or bump in your breast, and the person feels fine. They don't feel sick at all. Or there's spots in a person's lungs and they feel fine. Or there's a tumor discovered in your colon. Now, I did not feel fine, right? I was having pain.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was not life-threatening at that time. But they said, look, we got to get you into surgery, like I said, and get this thing out of you before it spreads and kills you. So I'm like, okay. And they wanted to have me in surgery within a couple of days. I ended up postponing it just a little over a week because I was diagnosed right before Christmas. And I didn't want to be in the hospital on Christmas because that's super depressing.
Yeah.
So like, I didn't want to miss just like the normal Christmas get-togethers and stuff.
Yeah.
And I go in on December 30th. They took out a third of my colon. It's about a foot. And when I woke up, they said it's worse than we thought. We took out the tumor. It had spread to some lymph nodes. We took out a bunch of lymph nodes. You're stage 3C. That means the next step for you is 9 to 12 months of chemotherapy. So, that was bad news, right? More bad news. And at that time, I just accepted that, like, okay, I guess this is what I guess I have to do, because I didn't know anything about cancer. And I just assumed the doctors had the best treatments available and they knew everything, and I didn't know anything. And so the two things that happened in the hospital that I always share is the first meal that they served me after removing a third of my large intestine was a sloppy Joe. And the sloppy Joe is just a funny kind of food item because nobody likes sloppy Joes, right? It's like, it's not something anyone ever says, like, you know what I'm in the mood for? Sloppy Joes.
Yeah.
Right? Like restaurants.
I will admit that I did like sloppy Joes when I was younger, but the real reason, and I've figured it out, was because of the amount of ketchup that I would put in it. And I was highly addicted to sugar. So that's why. That's the only reason why, not any of the other contents in those gross sloppy Joes.
Fair enough. And for kids, right? It's kind of a whip it together, easy meal for kids. And you find them at summer camp, right?
Yeah.
This is a meal for summer camp. Also the military, I'm sure they're serving those. Definitely serving sloppy Joes in prison.
Yes, for sure.
For sure. You're incarcerated. Sloppy Joes are on the menu. And hey, surprise, hospitals, right? They're serving them to sick people.
Colon, yeah, and colon cancer, like, and meat. Like, this is just not.
Well, the irony is that, yeah, red meat is a group 2 human carcinogen, according to the International Agency for Research on Cancer. So it's like red meat's contributing to cancer and heart disease, and they're serving people with cancer and heart disease red meat in the hospital. And they're serving them bacon, which is a group 1 carcinogen, and sausage and like hot dog type products. So so that kind of got the wheels turning a little bit. I was surprised that the food was that bad in the hospital. And then a few days later, I was told, okay, you're going to be able to go home today. And my surgeon came in to check on me. And as we were just having a conversation, I just happened to say, hey, is there any food I need to avoid? Because they cut out a third of my large intestine, right? Everything you eat is going through there. And so I just want to make sure there wasn't like, oh, whatever you do, don't eat Doritos or whatever, right? Like stay away from hot peppers or Dr. Pepper. I mean, who knows, right?
Right.
But his answer was, no, just don't lift anything heavier than a beer. So that was the advice I got from my abdominal surgeon. And that was it. That was all of it. So, you think about the typical cancer patient, they're rushed into treatment. If they have any questions about what to eat, they're told, eat whatever you want. And not only that, they send them home. These cancer dietitians send their patients home with a list of foods to eat that includes milkshakes, ice cream, pizza, anything you want. Okay. Basically, they're just telling them eat anything you want. And they want them to eat high calorie foods because they're worried that they won't eat enough while they're doing chemo, and that they'll lose too much weight, which is rarely the case. At least in the beginning of cancer treatment, because most cancer patients are overweight or obese. So they actually could stand to lose some weight. And I say that because most Americans are overweight or obese.
Right.
Over 2/3 of America, like over 70% of Americans are overweight, and almost roughly 40% are obese now. So
yeah. And being overweight and obese is like, it's directly linked to well over 10 cancers. I know that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a large handful of cancers.
Yeah. And just to be clear, like, we're not fat shaming here, right?
No, no.
But you need to understand that when you're overweight or obese, like, there are physiological reactions in your body that promote disease, chronic disease, high blood pressure, that's hypertension, right? High cholesterol, dysregulated hormone function, excess estrogen, which fuels cancer growth. And there are inflammatory molecules that are produced by body fat that promote inflammation, and fat cells, excess fatty acids actually suppress your immune system. So your immune cells, there are certain immune cells in your body that actually suck up fatty acids and become bloated and ineffective. So they've found that researchers, this is actually research that's just a few years old, that was done in my own state of Tennessee at Vanderbilt. Researchers found that immune cells in an obese environment become obese. Yeah. So you think about, your immune cells are the reason you're healthy, right? Your immune system keeps you healthy. Your immune cells fight off bacteria, viruses, parasites, pathogens, and identify and eliminate cancer cells. Like, that is the job of your immune system. And you have a lot of different types of immune cells, but one of them are called natural killer cells. They kill cancer cells. Like, that's what they do. And so, but when those cells become clogged up with fatty acids, they become slow and sluggish, and they just are not good at their job. So you think about, if your immune system is an army that's designed to fight off invaders and mutants and pirates, right, that are trying to take over the ship, you need them to be young, strong, and healthy, right? Not overweight and tired and slow. So that's what happens. And by the way, obesity is the second leading cause of cancer.
Yeah.
Right. Second leading cause. The number one cause is smoking cigarettes. Okay. Right. Tobacco, number one cause. I mean, chewing tobacco is a major cause too. Alcohol is a major cause, but obesity is number two. So, understanding that, you should want to get the weight off, right? Hopefully that's a motivator, not out of like shame because someone's telling you you're not beautiful. It's right. The motivator should be, I'd like to reduce my risk of cancer as much as possible. And getting down to a healthy body weight is huge. That is a huge step in reducing your risk. Yeah. So that's a tangent, but anyway, thanks for bringing it up.
Yes.
So anyway, I get home, I'm recovering from surgery. I am weaning myself off the pain medication. And as I sobered up, just within about a week of, getting home, I really started to think about my life and my future. And, like, the idea of poisoning my way back to health didn't make sense to me. I knew chemo was highly toxic. I'd seen what chemotherapy does to other humans, right? I had seen advanced cancer patients out in the world, right? At the mall or at a restaurant or church or wherever. Like, I'd seen that. And it makes an impression on you when you see another human in that state. I mean, it's alarming. Yeah. And I'll never forget the very first time I ever saw, an advanced cancer patient. I remember like being a little kid and being like, "Mom, what's wrong with him?" Because he looks so sick. And so I just was thinking about all those things and thinking, like, that's me. That's what I am to become. And so I think, again, like most cancer patients, I was not, I wasn't pumped
Yeah.
about the idea, about chemo drugs and how
Mhm.
toxic and destructive they are, and what they're going to do to me. So I had those reservations, and I prayed about it. My wife and I actually prayed together one day about it. And I just said, God, if there's another way besides chemotherapy, please show me. Just show me what to do. I don't know what to do. I need some help.
Mhm.
And it was a prayer of faith. Like, I really was reaching out and asking for help, and we're believers. And so I, I, I asked for help. And 2 days later, I got a book that was sent to me from a friend of my dad. And he lives in Alaska. And he sent me a book, and it was written by George Malcolmus, who had healed his colon cancer roughly 30 years prior with a raw food diet. And it just, as I started reading the book, he had colon cancer. I think I already said that. But as I started reading the book, I was like, oh my gosh, like, is this possible? Like, the body can heal? Like, no one's mentioned this. No one's told me this. And he made a case that the reason we have cancer is because our diet and lifestyle is really, really unhealthy. That's the cause of most cancers, or root cause of most cancers. And that if you change your diet and you change your lifestyle, you can empower your body to heal. But you have to make massive changes, right? And this isn't like going on Jenny Craig or something. So I adopted the raw food diet overnight. Like, to
Mhm.
me, I just knew, like, I prayed, this showed up. This is the answer to my prayer. I know it. I had no doubt. Most of the people around me thought I'd lost my mind. But I was like, no, this is it. This is what I have to do. And I was actually excited about the raw food diet because I'd never heard of it. Like,
Mm.
in January 2004, the raw food diet was a diet for sick people and weirdos.
Yeah. That's
That's
around
it.
when I heard, that's when, yeah.
You
I
know,
like learned about David Avocado Wolf like around
yeah,
that time.
yeah,
And I was like, what is this? And
yeah,
now I'm like, I've done it all.
yeah, yeah. It was fringe. It was
For
super
sure.
fringe. And remember, at that time, there was no social media,
Great.
and there was no YouTube
They were just
in
books. Mhm.
2004. Yeah, there were just like text-based websites
Yes.
and books. And so I read a book, and then I read another book, and I just went from book to book to book to book. And, from Lorraine Day to Richard Schultz to Anne Fromm. I mean, I just was continued to learn and about healing with whole foods and a raw diet and juicing. And all the
Mhm.
books that I found at that time were, they were all saying the same thing.
Mhm.
And there was really no confusion. I mean, they were all saying the same thing: fruits and vegetables, all raw or mostly raw, juicing, 64 ounces of vegetable juice every day or more, detoxification, stress reduction, exercise, forgiveness. Like, these are the main themes I kept seeing over and over again for people, either from people who had healed advanced cancers or from doctors and practitioners that were, had worked with a number of people to help them heal. And so those common threads were evident, and it offered me a lot of encouragement, right? Because, one person's story can change your life. One
Right.
person's story changed my life. But, it also helps to have a little bit more confirmation,
Yeah, for sure.
just to make sure, like, that person wasn't just lucky, or maybe
Yeah.
they just are lying, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So, but yeah, as I started to look for more information, I found it was out there. And now there's so much information, it's ridiculous. In fact, there's too much information online, and there's a lot of misinformation just
Mhm.
that's put out there just by people who just want to get clicks on their websites, right?
Mhm.
Or on their videos to make money off of
Right.
ad revenue.
Right.
And they really don't know what they're talking about. Like, and so what we encourage in our community is, like, if you're trying to heal cancer, you need to listen to people who've healed. Don't
Mhm.
take advice from any person who hasn't healed or helped anybody else heal. Like,
Mhm.
that's the most important criteria, because there's a lot of people out there with opinions that don't know what they're talking about. Right?
Right.
It's like, if I want to climb Mount Everest, have you ever climbed Mount Everest?
No,
Okay, I'm not asking you for advice.
definitely not.
You know what I'm saying?
All I
Like,
know is that you need a guide.
yeah, and don't ask me,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Never climbed it. And so cancer is a lot like that, right? We know it can be done. We know Mount Everest can be climbed because people have done it. We know cancer can be healed. All types and stages of cancer can be healed against the odds with a holistic approach because many people have done it.
Mhm.
I've interviewed dozens and dozens of people who've done it. This is part of what I do on my podcast and YouTube channel, is I interview other people who've healed, and we share their stories and their strategies, and you'll see the common threads. And so if it doesn't mean it's easy, but the fact is it's doable, and you need to follow people who've done it because there's already a path, right? If you're trying to get up Everest, you want to take the path that everybody takes. You don't want to try to blaze your own trail up a, you know,
Right.
a very, very dangerous mountain that will kill you.
Yeah.
So having said all that, I was encouraged by the information I was finding, but at the same time, I was very much alone. I had almost no support whatsoever. And that was really hard.
Yeah.
But I just, I think it helped a little bit that I'm an only child.
Mm.
And so like, I was sort of used to just doing my own thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
starting my own path in life. And I was an entrepreneur, and, and so that helped.
Mhm.
And what was interesting is that as soon as I started looking for support, I did find it. Like I found a naturopathic doctor who supported me. And then I found an integrative oncologist who supported me. And the first oncologist I went to told me I was insane if I didn't do chemo. And so I never went back to him.
Yeah.
And treated my wife and I pretty badly and talked down to us. And just like we were stupid. So there's a lesson there, which is, if your doctor doesn't support the decisions that you want to make and tries to bully you or intimidate you with fear, find another doctor.
Right.
Because you should never do anything out of fear. You
Yeah.
should
Yeah.
never, ever let anyone manipulate you out of fear.
Yeah. I teach 5 different pillars of holistic living, and success environment is one of them. And I was going to definitely ask you about that, but you've already brought it up. Like the support system in order to heal is so incredibly important. And, environment is not just the people that you're around, but also the things that you're reading, the things that you're seeing, all of the things around you physically and socially and more. And I'm really, really glad that you brought that up. And I will also say that as I am on a journey of healing my thyroid, I have been to different doctors, and some of them have told me, you need to be eating, like specific foods that I would definitely not be eating. That I just didn't feel aligned. I actually did feel like bullied, like, I'm plant-based, and they're like, you can't do that. If you want to heal, you can't do that. And I'm just like, okay, I'll find another doctor. I've found other doctors that are so much more supportive. And it can feel really bad when you do find those people that are belittling you. And I think a lot of people, Chris, are falling into, just they want to feel better regardless of what situation they're going through, or if it's cancer, thyroid, weight problems, whatever it might be. And they are told that this is how it has to be, and they're never seeking second opinions or anything. And until they find people like you that are going to support them along this journey, like, no, you don't have to be bullied. You don't have to, take that. Like, there are other ways. And it's just really good to know that there are people out there empowering people.
And you need to know that the strategy is to rush you into treatment,
Right.
before you think to ask for another opinion. Right. And that's
Right.
what happens to most patients. They're just rushed in out of fear. They never seek a second or third opinion.
Right.
Now, I have a free guide that's called 20 Questions for Your Oncologist. There's a link to it on every page of chrisbeatcancer.com. And if anybody listening is going through cancer, or you have a loved one going through cancer, please go download this guide and go through it, because I'm going to give you the most important questions that you need to ask your doctor before treatment. Even if you're in treatment, you still need to ask these questions, because the problem one of the biggest problems that cancer patients face, besides the fear and the coercion, right, and the intimidation into treatment, is that they lack knowledge. Like, they don't know the right questions to ask.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't ask the right questions, you don't get all the information. If you don't have all the information, you can't make an informed decision. And you just end up making a decision out of fear. And so, yeah, I happened to ask two questions, just two, that totally changed the conversation. The first one I asked was, so when we were meeting with that first oncologist, he basically said I had a 60% chance of living 5 years. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what about the raw food diet? And he said, no, you can't do that. It'll fight the chemo. That was kind of a weird answer, right? And I didn't ask him to expound on it. I was just kind of like, okay. And then the other question was, well, are there any alternative therapies available? A pretty innocuous question, right?
Right.
And I mean, he could have been like, there just really aren't that we know of that, have any evidence. And I don't know what to tell you, but there just really aren't. But no, he was just like, no, if you don't do chemo, you're insane. And then he just kept talking and talking and talking, just like belittling us, basically. And it was a major red flag, just watching his sort of knee-jerk reaction to an innocent question.
Right.
And I wasn't going in there trying to like argue with the guy or prove something because I didn't know anything. And so when you ask these questions in the 20 questions for your oncologist guide, and you don't even have to ask all 20, but when you start to ask informed questions, your doctor will either be very generous and patient with you, which is what you want, and give you, thoughtful answers and documented information to help you make a good decision, or they'll become very impatient and short with you. And then, this is not the doctor for you, right? When they start to treat you badly, it's like, okay, that was what I needed to know.
And that was the time that your wife kind of got on board, where she saw how he was treating you, right? And she's like, God, this is a little bit.
Yeah.
Hey, before we get too far into this episode, I want to remind you that there's just a few days left to get the Holistic Health Bundle. This is a collaboration of over 117 resources to help you on your path to better living. I want to remind you of what's inside of the bundle so that you can see if this is right for you, but you can always just click down in the show notes to see if there's 2 to 3 things that you're going to love, and then that's going to be well worth your money. But let's dive in a little bit deeper. First off, again, like I said, the Holistic Health Bundle is a culmination of 117 plus ebooks, courses, programs, including my brand new mini video course that I did with Cohen called Nurturing Nature, Empowering Holistic and Plant-Based Kids. And this entire bundle covers an array of other subjects that are tailored to suit a diverse range of interests and skill sets. And there are doctors, there are naturopaths, nurses, holistic practitioners, herbalists, detoxification specialists, and recipe creators that are in this bundle that have contributed their resource just for you to elevate your health. So in the bundle, there is, again, herbalism, homeopathy, inner healing, natural care and beauty, detoxification, biohacking. There's a lot of plant-based recipes in there. So I know that if you're following my channel, you're probably quite interested in plant-based living. And there's lots of juice recipes and salad recipes in there as well. And this collection has something special for everyone. And each resource has been crafted by experienced creators, like I said, and health professionals who are really passionate about helping you achieve your holistic well-being. And again, the value is super undeniable. Most of the products in the bundle are brand new and they have never been released before. And if you were to buy all of them separately, it would be over $8,000 worth of content. But thanks to us putting our minds and hearts together, you can get it right now only through July 30th for $50. That's a 99% discount. So the best way that you can explore this is to just look through the sales page to see if any of the things pop out to you. Just scroll down to the bottom of the sales page and see all of the contributions. And if 2 or 3 of them pop out, it's going to be well worth your money. And then you can dive into the other things, over the next year, download all of the PDFs and ebooks to a hard drive or a thumb drive or to Google Drive. And then the video courses will all be accessible for the next year. So please don't wait. We have just a few more days and then the Holistic Health Bundle will be gone. And I am just so honored to be part of it. And I know that you're going to love this resource to help you live a better life. All right, back to the show. A little bit
My
off.
wife's family was much more conventionally minded, and my mom was more of a crunchy mom from the 70s, and was always taking random supplements and buying weird crap from the health food store, like kelp.
Yeah.
Right. And, I was the only kid I knew that had kefir and sprouts in the fridge. Okay.
Yeah.
But, we still ate at McDonald's. Like it wasn't, it wasn't like today's hardcore crunchy moms like yourself.
Like me, I am totally going to admit it. It's fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah. And like we are now. But anyway, point is, like, she had this huge library of books on alternative medicine and herbs and cancer and raw food. Like she had read all of these books. And so that was my biggest source of information, was my mom's library, which was just a miracle, really. Like it was like, God orchestrating that on my behalf, like my mom's reading, having all this interest. She'd never been sick, had no chronic diseases at all, just had this continuing interest in health and wellness and staying healthy, and had a prescription to Prevention magazine for decades, But anyway, so it's funny how that all, that worked out. But I was able to use that information and to help myself. And I created a very simple daily routine to maximize the anti-cancer nutrition that was going into my body, to reduce my stress, to make sure I was exercising and detoxifying. And it was, once I had that routine in place, it was just like, okay, just rinse and repeat, right? Every day, just do the same thing every single day. Flood your body with nutrition. That was juicing, giant salads, fresh fruit smoothies. I took, tons of supplements, of course. Who knows if any of them helped, but I had a philosophy, which was, I'm going to take, and back then, like I wasn't reading scientific journals. I wasn't reading papers. Like I didn't know how much incredible nutrition science existed in 2004. Right. And so, but I was going from book to book, and there were things cited, of course, in those books, but I just instinctively knew, like, I've got to flood my body with vegetables and fruit. Like I've just got to get it in there and trust that it'll help. And so back to the philosophy was like, I had a very simple criteria. If there was a potential benefit, and this applies to supplements and like ancillary therapies, right? If there's a potential benefit and no risk of harm, and I can find it and afford it, I'll do it. Right? Yeah. It's that simple. So I had IV vitamin C, number of IV vitamin C infusions. I took a ton of supplements, all kinds of supplements, right? Herbal supplements, vitamins and minerals, all kinds of stuff. And, but all of that was supplemental to the foundational things I was doing. And that was nutrition. That was huge. And so, I was eating giant salads every day: broccoli, cauliflower, kale, cabbage, onions, mushrooms, peppers, loading it up with garlic, oregano, cayenne pepper, Italian seasoning, which is oregano's in that group, obviously, curry powder, turmeric, apple cider vinegar, olive oil, sauerkraut, sprouts. So I was sprouting garbanzo beans and mung beans and alfalfa and all kinds of stuff, right? Broccoli sprouts. So I just kind of figured out, like, this giant salad, like, and that's what's on the cover of my cookbook, which is called Beat Cancer Kitchen. You can maybe see it behind me. That giant salad became my meal. Like that was the meal. That was lunch and dinner every single day. And because I realized, like, there's no more potent and diverse meal I can concoct that has as many vitamins, minerals, enzymes, antioxidants, probiotics, and phytonutrients, anti-cancer compounds than this. Like, this is it. So, so that made it really easy for me, made it really simple. because I didn't have to plan my meals. I knew exactly what I was going to eat every day for lunch and dinner.
Yeah.
Right. It's like so simple. I went to the grocery store. It wasn't like strolling the aisles, like, I wonder what. It was like straight to the produce section, loaded up the cart. I knew all the vegetables I needed. I knew what fruit I wanted to eat, or if there was different fruit in season, I'd be like, oh, let me get some plums or whatever, like
Right.
cherries or, so I had a very simple routine, and it was sustainable. And that's so important. Like the more complicated the strategy is and the routine is, the harder it is to maintain.
Mhm.
And so in my book and in my coaching program, which is called Square One, we just basically teach people how to reduce and simplify their life and create this just simple, sustainable daily routine that maximizes nutrition, minimizes stress, making sure they're detoxifying and getting exercise. Exercise promotes cancer survival. Like, it strengthens your immune system. It's so important, and it's so often overlooked.
Mhm.
It's like the old adage, diet and exercise. Like, people just won't do it, right?
Yeah.
Like, they won't exercise and they won't change their diet. It's like, it's kind of hard to help somebody
Yeah.
who won't do those two things. But anyway, so yeah, we just focus on helping people make those changes. And it's incredible how fast your body changes when you change what you eat. I mean, within 2 weeks, your microbiome is virtually unrecognizable.
Right.
The bacterial populations in your gut change so dramatically for the better in 2 weeks that you would almost not even know it was the same person if you looked at two different samples. Like, you would assume it was two different people if you didn't know. Because plant food has all these incredible compounds, the fiber especially, but the prebiotic fiber and the starch and all these wonderful compounds that feed good bacteria.
Mhm.
And cancer has a pathogenic root cause. Many cancers are caused by bacteria, viruses, fungus, and other pathogenic microbes, parasites. And what's cool about plant food is
Mhm.
that there are all of these antimicrobial compounds in plant food, in plants, that selectively kill pathogenic bacteria, bad bacteria. One of the real bad boys is Fusobacterium. Fusobacterium, there's a lot of bacteria that fall under this umbrella of Fusobacterium, but Fusobacterium is a known cancer causer, definitely related to colon cancer. And there are all these incredible compounds that kill Fusobacterium in garlic,
Mhm.
in celery, in parsley,
Mhm.
in broccoli and all the cruciferous vegetables, in onions. There's a compound called falcarinol, which is in carrots and parsley, that is an antimicrobial compound that is known to kill cancer cells in the lab, but also it kills bacteria. So any natural compound that kills bacteria also tends to kill cancer cells, because many cancer cells are driven by bacteria.
I've wondered that the science behind the carrot juice that you say that you had a lot of when you were first starting off. And again, like you said, you weren't reading scientific things, but maybe that was killing that bacteria for you.
For sure. And carrots are, like all vegetables, right, are rich in vitamins, minerals, enzymes, antioxidants. But there are specific compounds that are unique to each vegetable. But the other thing that's often missing from the conversation, and carrots, the big one of carrots is the beta carotene and the falcarinol. Okay. Those are the two big, sort of very important compounds. But fruits and vegetables raw are also an incredible source of good bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
And this is often left out of the conversation, right? Everybody's talking about all the other benefits of the vitamins and minerals and enzymes, right? But they're not, and even the fiber, those are all good, but they're not talking about the good bacteria that you're getting. And they're like, oh, you need to take a probiotic. Like, well, the best probiotic is a raw piece of produce.
Right.
There's 100 million bacteria in an apple.
Right.
Awesome. And the cool thing about bacteria is bacteria competes. And so there are certain bacteria that will either eat or crowd out or kill bad bacteria. And you don't even have to know all the science and all the names, and all the names are long and, hard to pronounce anyway, most of them.
Yeah.
Most of them are abbreviated for that reason. But the cool thing is like, just knowing that you're getting all this benefit from eating plant food is incredible, right? And the problem with animal food is there's so much pathogenic bacteria, right? If you think about when you kill an animal, what starts happening immediately? Bad bacteria start breaking that animal down, right? They're trying to consume the flesh and bones and blood, right, of that animal. And so meat is always is full of bad bacteria. And that's why you're supposed to cook it, right, all the way. Most people don't, depending on the type of meat, right? People cook chicken all the way, but they tend to not cook beef all the way, steaks all the way. And they're eating it rare, medium rare, and it's got a bunch of blood in it. And blood is full of viruses and bacteria and parasites. And so that's a problem. Right? That's problematic.
Small problem there.
Yeah, it's problematic. And so when you're, and even when you cook, I talk about this in my first book, which is called Chris Beat Cancer, but even when you cook meat and you kill the bacteria, you still have dead bacteria that you consume. And those dead bacteria are basically trigger an immune response. They trigger an inflammatory immune response because your immune system doesn't know right away that those bacteria are alive or dead. They just know this is a foreign invader, mount an immune response. So they've done studies where they measure the immune response just after eating a meal of animal protein, and it lasts for hours. And so if you think about it, if you're eating animal protein 3 times a day, you have increased immune response, inflammation, and inflammatory immune response all day, every day, if you eat animal protein 3 times a day. So one problem with it, but there's a number of ways that animal protein contributes to cancer. I mentioned some earlier. We know that processed meats, hot dogs, bacon, salami, sausage, turkey and ham, like deli meats, are group 1 carcinogens, mainly linked to colon cancer. But then red meat is a group 2 carcinogen, also linked to colon cancer. So those are some direct causes, but the indirect causes that you get from animal protein is you get IGF-1, which is insulin-like growth factor that promotes cancer growth. You get heme iron, which cancer cells love. Cancer loves iron. Iron promotes cancer growth. Your body needs a little bit of iron, but too much iron becomes toxic and promotes cancer. Saturated fat and cholesterol are known to promote cancer growth. There's a sort of just a misunderstood idea that sugar feeds cancer. And the truth is that cancer loves fat and protein. Cancer cells love protein and fat. Sure, they can use sugar too, but they really do love protein and fat. So there's also a number of amino acids that fuel cancer growth. One of them is lysine, which is really high in animal food, and methionine, again, both really high in animal food. So on top of that, there's carcinogenic compounds that are created when you cook animal food. You're creating heterocyclic amines and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. On top of that, the way you cook the animal food is injecting more carcinogens into it, because when you cook on an open grill, you're infusing it, whether you're cooking over wood or natural gas or propane, you're infusing it with carcinogenic gas.
Yeah.
And because anytime the byproduct of burning gas or wood, right, are carcinogens, right? So if something's got a smoky flavor, you're eating carcinogens. And even if it doesn't, even if you're on a gas grill. So you can just see the way, like, eating animal food, it doesn't mean that you can never eat animal food, but when you eat animal food 3 times a day, every single day, you're consistently flooding your body with potential cancer-causing compounds and cancer-promoting compounds.
Right.
So this is the big question that comes to, like, what's the deal? Why is animal protein a problem with cancer? That's why.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will also just say for those who are listening and they're like, oh, it's the plant-based agenda. And again, like if you're feeling that way, because you've probably learned from so many doctors here on the Urban Pharmacy podcast about cancer prevention and heart disease prevention and all of that stuff. Well, there's no agenda here. This is science. And also Chris breaks down in his Square One program and probably in his book and in your community and program, and I'm sure you've answered these questions before. For those who are unwilling to remove animal protein from their diet, it can still fit in. You need to know some really key things though, like Chris was saying, how to prepare them, the amount in which is potentially safe for cancer prevention, etc. And so, it doesn't have to be all, but the more plants that you eat, the better. And I really found it refreshing, Chris, when I think I was just listening to your Square One program and you were going and breaking down like, okay, if you don't want to get rid of animal protein for whatever reason, this is what you need to be doing. You need to keep it small. This is how you need to cook it, et cetera, et cetera. So, and of course we know sourcing is so important, and I don't promote animal products, but I just want those listening to know that don't throw out the towel and think that it has to be all or nothing. The more plants that you can get, the better. So
yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I got to correct myself because earlier I said lysine and I meant to say leucine as in terms of this amino acid that that fuels cancer growth. But yeah, the thing is, like, if you look around the world at the healthiest, longest living people, they're not vegan,
right,
but they eat diets that are on average about 95% plant-based.
right.
Okay. Now, the American diet is not 95% plant-based. Okay. So what 95% looks like is eating a serving of animal protein a few times a week to a few times a month. Right. So instead of 3 times a day, 3 times a week, that's an 80% reduction, right? Just that shift from 3 times a day to 3 times a week. So I'm not a vegan, so I'm not like pushing a vegan agenda or anything like that. I'm solely interested in helping people prevent and heal cancer and other chronic diseases. So now the side benefit is, yeah, sure, there's far less animals will be tortured and slaughtered in factory farms if we shifted to a more plant-based diet. But and by the way, this is not eat fake meat advice.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
This is not eat fake meat or crickets or bugs or whatever. It's like eat whole plant foods, plant foods like fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, herbs and spices, whole grains, tubers, right? Potatoes and squash. So eat whole plant food from the earth that God made for us. You don't have to eat anything man-made or factory made. And the thing about man-made food, by the way, the fake meats and stuff, I mean, they're loaded with sodium, they're loaded with additives and preservatives and processed oils, and they're not good for you. So don't fall for that, the fake meat sort of trap. Right. And processed foods in general, remember I was talking earlier about bacteria and microbes and cancer. The other thing that processed food is doing to us that is not talked about enough is that processed food is loaded with antibiotics. People don't realize this. Antibiotics, here's another word for antibiotic that'll help: preservatives. Preservatives are antibiotics. What do preservatives do? They prevent bacteria from breaking down the Twinkie so that it'll sit on the shelf for 10 years.
Okay. I've never thought of it this way. This is mind-blowing.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Totally.
So preservatives keep food from being eaten by bacteria. They are antibiotics. So you're eating antibiotics, not to mention the antibiotics that are sprayed on food, glyphosate, right? The weed killers, the fungicides, the herbicides, the pesticides, right? So you got the spraying that's happening on conventional produce, and then you got the preservatives added to processed food. So those antibiotics are causing problems. They are killing off good bacteria and maybe
Yeah,
some bad
they're
bacteria
robbing,
too,
yeah,
right?
robbing our gut from,
But they are definitely jacking up your gut
yeah.
and creating inflammation, gut dysbiosis, and generally a lack of diversity in gut bacteria. And the more diverse your gut bacteria, the healthier you will be. This has been studied a lot, and especially in cultures like African cultures where they just have incredibly healthy guts, and they look at the bacterial composition, and it has more diversity than the typical American, because Americans aren't eating enough fruits and vegetables and plant food, and we're just eating like meat, which has basically dead bacteria, so that's not helping, right? Processed food, bread, there's no beneficial bacteria in there, right? Yeah, there's some fiber, but not great amounts of fiber. And so the cool thing is it's just so easy to shift back in the right direction. You can start with the next meal, right?
Yeah.
You eat a giant salad or a big plate of cooked vegetables, and you are on your way to repopulating your gut with good bacteria that will crowd out bad bacteria. So it's incredible. There's this other study that comes to mind that kind of blew me away, which was they found that if you eat a diet that is devoid of fiber, right? So basically like a carnivore diet,
Yeah.
a paleo type diet, all meat diet, what happens is there is a significant die-off of good bacteria in the gut that doesn't come back. And so, it's a horrible, horrible diet. Like you do
Horrible
not want to
idea.
eat a diet that is all meat.
Yeah. So, Chris, you were raw, and I know we're wrapping this conversation up, but let's do some rapid fire things here. You were raw. You're no longer raw. How long did you stay raw?
So I was 100% raw for 90 days.
Okay.
And then working with a naturopath, he advised me to add about 20% of cooked food. So mostly just cooked veggies, right? Some quinoa, some brown rice, some cooked veggies to my diet, just to get a little more calories, because I was clinically underweight. Now, some people can go raw a lot longer than that, for months and even years. I don't think the all raw diet is a diet that people should eat for the rest of their life. Right. Mainly just because there's no real science on longevity with eating an all raw diet. Right. There is science on longevity on eating a 95% plant-based diet. So I try to, so raw is amazing for a healing season of your life. It's an incredible healing detoxification diet. And that's what we stress. And so, so then I went from, being 100% raw plant-based to 80% raw. And then, and just carried that for forward for many years. And then once I got well, I experimented with some other diets like Weston Price and paleo and stuff like that. And then started reading the scientific literature and learned a lot, and realized, there's no better diet than a plant-based diet. And so now I just eat a variety of raw and cooked food. In fact, this is lunch. It's empty now, but this is almost a 40-ounce fruit smoothie. And it was all raw, obviously. Strawberries, cherries, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries. So there's 4 cups of frozen berries, almonds and walnuts, hemp seed, or hemp hearts, right? Normally I would put 2 handfuls or more of spinach or kale, but I'm out. So no leafy greens in it today, but normally there is. And then 7 dates to sweeten it, because most of the berries aren't that sweet, right?
Super tart when you try to make a berry smoothie. Yeah.
Yeah, they're very tart. And sometimes I do them tart, but a banana or some dates sweeten them up. And what else is in it today?
Liquid. I mean, are you using water? Are you also?
And water, yes. Oh, but
water,
I love to use aloe vera. About 8 ounces of aloe vera as a base. And then we'll add a little bit more water, just enough to make it blendable.
The filet juice, the aloe vera filet juice.
Yes.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. There's a brand called Stockton Aloe, aloe, also known as Aloe One from Haley Nutrition. They will ship it to you frozen. I think they've got the best aloe out there. It's awesome. But yes, so that was lunch today. Breakfast is often like a big bowl of oatmeal with, hemp, flax, chia, blueberries, And then dinner will be maybe a giant salad or some variety of cooked veggies that my wife makes. And we've got a bunch of recipes in our cookbook, Beat Cancer Kitchen.
Yeah.
Book plug. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's the way I eat now. It's predominantly plant-based, about 99% plant-based, 98%. It's up there, pretty high. And I've been doing that for almost 20 years.
Wow. That's so powerful. And your story is so inspirational. And before we wrap this up, I have two questions. Well, one is about the cancer journey, and then one is one that I ask everybody else. But as a bonus question, Chris, we know the alliums are so cancer fighting. Just on a fun note, you say that you like to sprout. I don't know if you're currently sprouting or if you go through phases like me, where it's like all sprouts all the time. And then sometimes you have to take a break because it's a lot to keep up with. But have you done onion sprouts yet?
No.
I am waiting on a study. I've told Will Bolsowitz, he's the reason why he actually put onion sprouts, or I'm the reason why he put onion sprouts in his book. He sprouted them. He was like, oh my God, these are amazing. They will blow your mind. You have to go and sprout some
I will do that.
And I'm waiting for the studies to show, we know like the sulforaphane in the broccoli sprouts versus, the mature broccoli. I can't even imagine how healing onion sprouts are. Anyways,
that's awesome.
That was a side note. You must try them. They're so delicious. I just wanted to ask you real quick.
Are they strong? Are they pungent?
They're really strong and they're really delicious. They're super potent and spicy, and they're still crunchy because the seed doesn't really fall off of them.
Okay.
So they have little black crunchy seed. Oh God,
with
they're
a tail
good.
on it.
Yeah, they're so good.
Well, I imagine
they're very difficult to sprout. I will say they're super hard to germinate. So you have to have patience. Get a good germinating brand, like True Leaf Kitchen, or High Mowing Seeds. I think we've gotten some sprouting onion seeds from there before, but be persistent with it and wait sometimes 15 days it takes to germinate them.
Wow, 15 days.
It takes time, but
I'm really interested.
They're mind-blowingly good. They're so good.
Well, and along those lines, I would not be surprised at all if there was sort of a similar relationship with let's say the amount of allicin, which is the big anti-cancer compound in the allium vegetables, in sprouts versus mature onions. It'd be really interesting to see the difference. But the thing about sulforaphane is all the sulforaphane is basically produced once you sprout broccoli seeds. It produces all the sulforaphane it's going to produce in the sprout. And then the broccoli grows into a mature plant, but it doesn't produce any more sulforaphane.
It's just diluted. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just diluted by more fibrous tissue, right? Plant matter.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have to eat multiple heads or just a little handful of the sprouts.
Yeah.
That's powerful and awesome. Okay. You mention, and you talk about this often, you talk about faith a lot. I just wanted to ask you before we wrap this up about the importance of trying to stay out of the fear cycle, and the importance of, and maybe you can pull these together somehow, the importance of planning ahead to keep, in your life, if you are diagnosed with cancer, and maybe how that can kind of keep you out of the fear cycle if you're planning ahead for the future, so that you have something to keep going for.
Yeah, that's great. Well, if we're talking about for cancer patients, especially, I talk about this a lot in my first book, and then we have a devotional called Beat Cancer Daily. It's the orange book behind me, but it's really important to get very clear if you have a cancer diagnosis. What do you want to live, and why? And you need to ask yourself, do you want to live? Yes or no? There's only yes or no. And then if the answer is yes, why do you want to live? And then you need to get really clear about why you want to live, or who you have to live for, or both. And write it down. And don't just write it down, paste it on all over your house. If it's people, put their pictures on your fridge, put them on your bathroom mirror, write, the list of what you have to live for on the bathroom mirror and lipstick. Like, just like, you have to really keep this in front of you at all times, because this is your motivator. Like, this is the fuel to your fire. And so once you're clear about that, then I call this the beat cancer mindset. These are like components of what I call the beat cancer mindset. Once you're clear about that you want to live, and you know why, then you have to be willing to accept full responsibility for your health. You have to be willing to change your whole life and enjoy the journey, right? Just make a decision to embrace this as an adventure, right? Not as a curse, right? Like, don't look at it as a curse. Yes, it's difficult. And yes, you could call it adversity in some ways, but you also have to embrace that adversity as a new adventure in your life, right? And that shifts you out of this negative sort of feeling sorry for yourself state, right? Into more of a positive, courageous state of mind.
Right.
And so making plans for the future, so coming back around to your original question, is part of that process of deciding that you want to live and why you want to live and what you're going to do with your life. And so for me, like, I wanted to be a parent. I wanted to be a dad. Like, I just, it just gets you out of this sort of daily woe is me thinking. And as you start to make plans for the future, you get busy living instead of getting busy dying.
Yeah. No,
So that's huge. It really is huge. And then the other part of your question, what was the first thing you asked?
The
fear.
Yeah. Fear.
So what I did, when you have cancer, it's really scary, right?
Yeah.
Just the diagnosis is a PTSD inducing event for some people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that traumatic, right? Someone saying you have a deadly disease. And so that fear isn't just that one day, right? It stays with you every day. And it's like the first thing you think about when you wake up. It's the last thing you think about when you go to bed. You're thinking about it. You're constantly reminded throughout the day that you have cancer. And the best parts of your day are the parts where you're busy and you forget, right? Like, where you're so busy doing something, you forget you have cancer. Like, that's the best.
Yeah.
And then you get that reminder, and here comes the fear, right? And so I had to learn how to deal with it quickly. Like, anytime I would feel the fear start to, creep into my mind and my heart, I would just stop and say, okay, God, like, I'm feeling afraid, right? But I'm just going to give you my fear. I'm just trusting you with my life and my future. I'm just laying my fear down and just saying, I trust you, right? I trust you. I'm not going to be afraid. I'm not going to let this fear steal my joy. And I didn't pray that one time. I prayed it more times than I could even tell you, right? It was constant. It was just my constant going back to that simple act of like, I'm trusting you with my fear. I'm not going to be afraid, right? Because fear will steal your joy, right? It will. And on top of that, fear, anxiety, and worry actually cripple your immune system. So being in that mental and emotional state affects your physical state.
Yeah.
So, I just learned quickly, and I'd still practice this today, right? Not about cancer, but about other worries, right? Other worries and problems. And, when 2020 happened and all that, I mean, I was never afraid, ever. Like, I'm like, I know how to deal with fear. I'm not afraid of this at all. I'm not going to live in fear, right? At all. And I didn't, like, wasn't afraid ever.
Yeah, you showed up in 2020. You had confidence and it was awesome. People were like, I'm listening to what Chris is saying.
A few people, other people didn't like what I had to say, and it's okay. But
it's okay.
One of the things I said early on, thank you, by the way, I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah.
One of the things I said early on was like, look, now the world knows how cancer patients feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we were, the world was bombarded with all of this fear producing information all day, every day. I mean, the news channels had tickers on the corner of the screen with death counts and infection numbers that were largely inflated. And it was just constant fear. And people did all kinds of things that were completely irrational out of fear, because with enough repeated fear information, you will succumb if you don't understand that you're being coerced through fear. Then you will succumb to that kind of propaganda, and people become very easy to manipulate and coerce. And how do I know this? Because that's what happens in the cancer industry. Like, my cancer experience taught me this. That's the playbook in a lot of aspects of medicine, but cancer is the worst. And so when I saw that very same playbook being rolled out, it was like, okay, I know this. Like, I recognize this right away. And I have not been given a spirit of fear. And so, I was trying to be as vocal as I could to help people not get sucked into irrational, fear-based thinking and behavior. And well, you even see it today. I mean, yesterday I saw a person in a mask. Yeah. Yesterday.
So did I.
I'm like, what? Still?
I know.
Still wearing a mask? But, I mean, not trying to judge. I'm not trying to judge. I'm just it's just, there's just never been a better example of irrational behavior than a person wearing a mask walking outside by themselves. It's like, what do you think is going to happen, right? How do you think you're going to get sick walking outside alone? Do you think there's a disease in the bushes that's about to jump out and get you?
Right.
Like, is it just floating down the sidewalk? Like, what do you think? What are you thinking? And again, that's why fear is so dangerous, because it shuts down your ability to think rationally, and you just act impulsively.
Yeah.
And you can't make a good decision in a state of fear. And like, this is full circle, right? Because this is one of the first things I said at the beginning of our interview, right? You cannot make a good decision, a wise, rational, reasonable, thoughtful decision. You cannot make the best decision for you in a state of fear.
Yeah. Wow. So powerful. All right. This is the final question that I ask everybody, Chris. And I think that you already teach this, but I love to hear everybody's different perspective on this. What does holistic living mean to you?
No one's asked me that, so thanks. Well, holistic living, to me, the holistic approach to health is an approach to health that is comprehensive and is addressing all aspects of health and disease. And when I say that, I mean, health is not just your physical health, right? It's mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical, and even relational. And so the problem with conventional medicine is they only look at physical health, typically. I mean, yes, there's a whole mental health industry and psychiatry and psychology and all that, but generally when a person is sick with a chronic disease, right, they're just trying to treat the disease, or not even treat the disease, treat the symptoms of the disease. And so this is a very deep rabbit hole, but I'll try to summarize it. I talk about this in great detail in my book, by the way, in Chris Beat Cancer, the book, but stress is a root cause of many chronic diseases, because when you're in a state of stress, you tend to self-medicate with unhealthy food. And when you're in a state of stress, whether it's anger and bitterness for people in your past, jealousy of people in your present, worry about the future, right? When you're in a stressed, and a lot of people are jumping back and forth between all three of those, right? But when you're living in stress, your body responds by elevating stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol. And those hormones suppress your immune system and promote inflammation and promote weight gain. And so stress is leading you down this path of disease. And then what many of us do to manage our stress is we self-medicate. And how do we do that? Well, food, drugs, alcohol, and other, really unhealthy lifestyle behaviors, maybe pornography or gambling or spending money you don't have. So then you're compounding the stress, right? And the effect that it has on you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. Right?
Yeah.
So the holistic approach is like taking a step back and looking at your whole life, which is what I did, like kind of laying it all on the table and going, okay, like the diet and exercise, that's the easy part. Like any person can change their diet overnight, right? Every single person can change what they eat starting the next meal.
Right.
almost every person, unless you're an invalid, right, can start exercising today. Every person almost can go for a walk today. Like that's starting exercising, just going for a walk for 20 minutes. So those are the easy things. The hard things are stepping back and going, okay, who do I need to forgive? Right?
Yeah.
That's hard. And saying, who do I need to ask for forgiveness from?
Mhm.
And saying, what's going on in my life? What do I need to say no to? How am I acting and reacting? Like, do I like how I treat people? Am I being responsible? Am I being irresponsible? Am I reliable? Am I not reliable? You know what I'm saying? Am I critical and judgmental of other people? How am I thinking? And I need to change the way I'm thinking, right?
Mhm.
Am I negative and critical and cynical and pessimistic a lot? And if so, I got to catch myself in the middle of those thoughts and, you know, comments, and interrupt that bad behavior and replace it with something positive, right? So like if I start thinking critically of somebody, I can be like, wait a minute, I'm being judgmental. Let me just stop.
Mhm.
Right. And so like, oh, I'm complaining. I just realized it. I'm going to stop complaining. And so I know I'm on sort of a deep tangent
Okay.
here,
Yeah.
but the point is like, this is a holistic approach. Like you
Right.
really have to look at every aspect of your life, right? The cool thing is that the diet and exercise, just starting that gives you so much momentum.
Yeah.
Like those changes give you this big boost of forward momentum. And then you realize once you get just that stuff going, then you realize, okay, now what else can I do? Right.
Mhm.
And that's kind of like, I call like the raw food diet, like the gateway drug to, you know, to radical life change.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because like once you do that and you realize, oh, I can do this and I feel good doing it, then you're like, okay, what's next? Like
Mhm.
what can
Right.
I work on next?
You have
And that's the,
different mental, everything changes.
yeah. And that's the precise process that I went through, right? You can't change everything overnight, but you can change your diet and start exercising
Mhm.
overnight. And then over time, weeks, months, you can really start to dig through your own fears and your flaws and your bad habits, right? Your bad thought habits and physical habits, and start one by one. Like you can fix them. You can break your bad habits. And so the big fight, the big cancer fight or the big health and wellness fight is, it's not a physical fight. It's here, right? It's like between your ears. Like you have to win the battle in your mind before you can win the battle in your body. And so, yeah, that's the shortest possible answer
Well,
I can give.
it really is what you teach though. I feel
Yes.
that's to me what holistic living means. And you said it, Chris. It's literally taking a bird's eye view of your life. And whether you practice the pillars of lifestyle medicine, the pillars that I teach, the pillars that Chris teaches, like they're all pretty much it's a, you know, it's a full approach
Yes. Full
to
spectrum.
wellness. Yeah. And it's not just diet and exercise. It's all
That's right.
things.
And
So
the one little example I'd like to give is like, I've met people who had cancer and they, you know, they change their diet, they exercise, they take the supplements, they do the IV therapies, they do some alternative stuff. Like they're doing a lot of stuff, right? But they won't forgive.
mm,
And that's the one barrier to
mhm,
healing is
mhm.
forgiveness. I mean, forgiveness is one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself, for your mental, emotional, and spiritual health,
Yeah.
is forgive every single person who's ever hurt you. And I
Mm,
did it. Like I made a decision to do it and I worked through it. I
mhm.
worked through my past and like one by one, I forgave every person who has ever hurt me until there was no one left,
Yeah.
right? You can't do that in one sitting. It takes
Mhm.
time, but it's so powerful. So I just want to make sure I leave your audience. I mean, if you forget everything I said in this interview, I hope you'll remember that the most powerful thing you can do is forgive.
Wow.
It really
Wow.
is.
So powerful. Well, that's a good place to end. Chris, thank you so much for your time and for your wisdom and for your knowledge and for your inspiration. We really, really appreciate it. And we'll make sure to put all of your links in the show notes so people can get connected to you, get your books, get your cookbook, and hopefully drop into your community and listen to Square One too, because it's really amazing. So Chris will launch the Square One intermittently throughout the year, and you guys need to listen to it. And if you do have cancer, you should for sure be part of his community. And I think it's just really good knowledge to have for people who don't either, if they want to prevent cancer and just take a holistic approach to life. So Chris, thanks again. And we appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Stacy. It was really fun.
Thanks. Be well.